They insult you. They challenge you. They throw sarcastic words like knives, expecting you to flinch, to fight back, to say something, anything, because that's how they win. That's how they feed their ego, by dragging you into their game. But what if you didn't play? What if instead of clapping back, you responded with nothing but stillness? Silence, used the right way, is not weakness. It's dominance in disguise. This is the first rule of psychological warfare without words. The power move begins where the noise ends. Think about the last time someone tried to get under your skin. Maybe it was a backhanded comment at work. Maybe it was a so-called friend who made you the punchline of a joke in front of others. Most people would defend themselves, justify their behavior, try to reclaim their dignity through words. But words are reactive. Words give the enemy what they want. Confirmation that you are affected. Now imagine this. Someone tries to provoke you, and instead of reacting, you pause. You just look at them. No smirk, no frown, no witty comeback. Just unshaken presence. Your silence becomes a mirror, forcing them to see themselves, to feel exposed, awkward, vulnerable. And the more they wait for a response that never comes, the more unsettled they become. Because you've done something they didn't expect. You broke the pattern. You didn't let their energy control yours. That's the opening strike in this art form. Disrupt the drama by refusing to fuel it. In psychological dynamics, silence is not the absence of power. It is the suspension of your opponent's control. It's an interruption of their mental rhythm. Most people are addicted to feedback. They say something rude, and they expect an instant emotional return. If you deliver that return, even in the form of a clever comeback, you've completed the circuit. You've played into their hands. But the moment you opt out, the moment you respond with unshakable calm, you make them question their own position. Did they go too far? Do they look foolish now? Should they keep pushing? That self-doubt is your first invisible victory. And it all started with your refusal to engage. You didn't need to match their volume. You didn't need to correct their narrative. You let your silence speak, and it screamed, "I don't owe you my reaction." This is not about being passive. It's not about letting people walk all over you. It's the exact opposite. It's about psychological redirection. You take their emotional bait and dissolve it with indifference. You shift the spotlight from their insult to their insecurity. And you don't need to lift a finger or raise your voice to do it. It's a power so subtle that most people never realize they're being outplayed until it's too late. But you know. You stayed calm while they lost their cool. You held your ground while they stumbled over their own need for attention. You made them feel small not by attacking, but by making their attack feel irrelevant. And that's the paradox. The most brutal comeback is the one that never needs to be said. That's how the art of psychological defense begins, not with retaliation, but with restraint. You don't chase their energy. You absorb nothing. You attract all the attention and leave them wondering how they lost the fight they thought they were winning. In a world addicted to noise, your silence is the loudest weapon. There's something unnerving about an unbroken gaze. Not a stare filled with anger, not one that's wild or emotional, but calm, steady, unflinching, the kind of eye contact that doesn't waver, doesn't blink, and most of all, doesn't care about making the other person comfortable. This is the next level of silent psychological warfare, the weaponized stare. If silence is the sword, the stare is the dagger. It's personal, sharp, and it cuts without ever needing to touch. Let's break it down. When someone disrespects you, when they mock you, try to provoke you, or assert dominance, they're usually expecting one of three things: a verbal reaction, physical retreat, or nervous discomfort. If you argue back, they get attention. If you walk away, they feel victorious. If you squirm, they know they've won. But the stare, the unbroken, emotionally detached stare, that short-circuits the entire dynamic, because now you're doing something very different. You're no longer reactive. You're observing, calculating, completely unreadable. And that is terrifying to someone who thrives on control. When you lock eyes with someone who's trying to insult you, and you hold that eye contact without tension, without fear, without blinking, you force them into a state of exposure. It's like turning a spotlight on them in the middle of their act. Suddenly, the power dynamic flips. They're the one being evaluated. They're the one being watched. They're the one unsure of what comes next. And you? You remain still, focused, powerful. This isn't about aggression. It's not about trying to scare someone like a threat. No, this is deeper. This is about communicating that nothing they say or do has the power to move you, that you are in complete control of your internal state. And when someone realizes they can't get a rise out of you, they can't break you with their words or shake you with their presence, it disarms them completely. There's a very specific psychological effect here. When someone makes a move and receives no feedback, the human brain begins to panic. Our minds are built to interpret facial cues, emotional signals, verbal responses. But when the face is still, the eyes are locked, and the silence stretches. The brain starts to invent explanations. It begins to doubt. It wonders, what is he thinking? Why isn't she saying anything? Did I go too far? Is this person dangerous? Smarter than me? Stronger than I thought? In that moment, your silence combined with your gaze becomes a psychological riddle, one they can't solve, and in their scramble to figure you out, they lose control of the interaction. Let's take a real-life example. You're at a social gathering. Someone makes a passive-aggressive remark aimed at you. Maybe it's about your job, your appearance, your past. The room expects you to laugh it off or argue back. But instead, you simply turn toward them slowly. You meet their eyes. You don't smile. You don't blink. You say nothing, just presence, just direct, piercing awareness. You hold their gaze for 5 full seconds, maybe 10. Then you look away, not in submission, but because you choose to, because you've made your point. The entire room shifts. People feel the change in the air. And the one who made the joke? They feel naked, because you just exposed them without saying a word. That's the brilliance of the stare. It doesn't argue. It doesn't react. It judges. It examines. It questions. And it's always louder than any comeback could be. Now here's the catch. You can't fake this. You can't perform the stare if you're still emotionally invested in the insult. If you're angry or hurt, they'll see it. The power of the unblinking stare comes from one place only: complete inner stillness. You must not need their approval. You must not fear their opinion. You must not be looking for validation or revenge. Your stare only works when it comes from a place of grounded detachment. You're not there to win. You're there to show you're untouchable. That's what makes it so effective. Because the person who can hold their gaze without blinking, without flinching, without flaring up, is the person who has nothing to prove. And in the game of psychological dominance, that's who always wins. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, don't flinch. Don't speak. Don't even smirk. Just look. Steady. Calm. Silent. Let your eyes say what your mouth never needs to. Let your gaze tell them, you don't intimidate me. You don't amuse me. You don't even reach me. And watch how quickly the power dynamic shifts, not with noise, but with pure presence. Imagine this. Someone is confronting you, maybe even yelling at you, throwing accusations, words sharp enough to cut, energy charged like a storm. They're trying to break you. They want to force a reaction, to see you flinch, cry, defend, retaliate. And yet, you give them nothing. Not a word, not a twitch. You become a wall. Still, unmoving, not out of fear, but by choice. That's the stonewall technique, and it's devastating. This is not the silence of weakness. This is not the silence of someone who doesn't know what to say. This is strategic silence, a mirror held up to chaos. You are not absorbing their drama. You are reflecting it back to them in its raw, ugly form. And the truth is, most people can't stand to see themselves unfiltered. You see, people who lash out are often acting from emotional overflow, anger, insecurity, jealousy. They expect you to catch that emotion, wrestle with it, throw it back. That's the normal script. But when you step out of that script, when you become a silent witness instead of a participant, something strange happens. Their storm starts to collapse under its own weight. Think of a boxer who throws punch after punch into a bag that doesn't hit back. At first it feels powerful, then it feels pointless. Finally, it feels exhausting. That's what the Stonewall technique does to verbal attackers. Your stillness becomes a void. And in that void, they start to hear themselves, really hear themselves. Every jab, every insult, every petty attempt to provoke, it begins to echo. And the more they speak, the more ridiculous they sound. Because without your reaction, their words hang in the air, unanswered, unvalidated. It's like shouting into a canyon and realizing the only voice you hear is your own. That's when the real psychological shift happens. They become self-conscious. Their aggression backfires. They start to feel exposed, childish, maybe even ashamed, because your silence didn't give them a target. It gave them a reflection. Now let's be clear. This isn't easy. The instinct to defend yourself is primal. We are wired to respond when attacked. But the highest level of self-mastery is the ability to choose your energy, not let others choose it for you. And when you master the Stonewall technique, you're not ignoring the other person. You're mastering the situation. You're saying, your chaos is yours to deal with. I'm not picking it up. In relationships, this is especially powerful. During heated arguments, many people escalate because the other person keeps engaging, keeps feeding the fire. But when one person stops playing the emotional ping-pong game and becomes still, unshaken, that silence breaks the loop. It creates a psychological interruption. The other person is forced to pause, recalibrate, reflect. They may not show it right away, but trust this. They feel it. And more importantly, you remain in control, not just of the moment, but of yourself, because true power doesn't scream. It doesn't flail. It doesn't chase validation. True power is calm, unmovable, selective. The Stonewall technique is not about winning arguments. It's about protecting your peace. It's not about proving you're right. It's about preserving your dignity. You don't have to lower your frequency just because someone else is vibrating in chaos. And the more you practice this kind of silence, the more magnetic you become. People feel it. They sense that emotional stillness. They may not understand it, but they respect it, even fear it. Because in a world of reactive people, the one who doesn't react becomes the most unpredictable, the most composed, the most powerful person in the room. And unpredictability, that's leverage. The less people can read you, the less they can control you. The less they can control you, the more they're forced to respect your boundaries, even if they don't like you. Silence is not passive. Silence is strategic. When done with presence, silence becomes pressure. It makes people sit with their own emotions instead of passing them on to you. It makes them realize that not everyone is available for their drama. And in doing so, it teaches them a valuable lesson. Not everyone can be dragged into the mud. Some people are stone walls, not because they don't feel, but because they choose not to be shaken. So next time someone throws fire your way, don't feed it. Don't explain. Don't defend. Don't break your stillness. Just be the wall. And let them burn out in the silence. They say actions speak louder than words. But even beyond actions, there's a realm few truly understand. Presence. Not what you do, not what you say, just how you exist in a space. Your posture, your breath, your stillness. And when someone tries to challenge you, mock you, intimidate you, there is one silent but overwhelming force that can dismantle their entire strategy. Your body language. This is where the real communication happens. Before a single word is spoken, your posture has already told the story. Your stance has already drawn the line. Your expression, or lack of one, has already set the tone. People think comebacks need to be clever. They don't. They need to be felt. And your physical presence, when mastered, can speak volumes. Let's begin with posture. When you are attacked, verbally, socially, psychologically, The body naturally wants to contract. Shoulders hunch, arms cross, eyes drop. You try to protect yourself without realizing it. That's instinct. But power doesn't live in instinct. Power lives in control. So when you override that urge, when you keep your shoulders back, chin level, spine straight, you are sending a very different message. I am unthreatened. I am here. I take up space. Now combine that with stillness. Not frozen, not rigid, still, controlled, relaxed. You're not fidgeting. You're not shifting your weight. You're not tapping your foot or wringing your hands. You're just there, grounded like a tree, a quiet storm. This kind of stillness is magnetic. It radiates calm authority. It says, I am not bothered. I am not chasing approval. I am not afraid. And people feel it. Because most are so used to noise, so used to movement, over-explaining emotional volatility, that when someone shows up with total physical calm, it creates a gravitational pull. They want to understand you. They want to read you. They want to crack that code. But they can't. And that's where the psychological advantage begins. Let's talk about your face. Not a smirk, not a glare. Just neutral, collected. Not trying to intimidate, not trying to please. Just being. A completely unreadable expression tells people you're not emotionally available for their drama. You are not rewarding their bait with amusement or outrage. You are letting their performance fall flat. And that, ironically, hurts more than any insult could. Because people crave emotional impact. When they get none, it forces them to sit in the discomfort they tried to project onto you. Even how you breathe matters. Shallow, fast breaths show anxiety. Deep, slow, intentional breathing communicates something else entirely. Control. When you breathe from the diaphragm, when your chest doesn't rise with every inhale, you show that nothing they're saying is touching your core. You are literally and metaphorically unaffected. Let's bring this together. Picture someone insulting you in a crowd, trying to provoke you in front of others. But instead of reacting, you stand tall. You keep your arms loose at your sides. You lock eyes for a second, but not aggressively, and then simply return your gaze to neutral space. Your jaw is relaxed. Your chest is open. Your breathing is calm. Your face is unreadable. And you don't move. You don't speak. You don't even blink at their level. What you've just done is more than a refusal to engage. You've declared psychological independence. You've said, your words don't shape my reality. I am not pulled into your orbit. The body doesn't lie. And when your body tells the story of composure, presence, and inner power, it becomes a language that even your enemies understand. It says, I do not need to win this moment, because I've already won myself. This kind of body language isn't something you perform. It's something you cultivate. You train it in still moments, in solitude, in discomfort, so that when pressure comes, you don't collapse into reaction. You expand into awareness. You occupy space with purpose. And in doing so, you flip the script. Because here's the twist. The person who tries to dominate you with words or energy expects you to mirror their state. But when you hold your ground, quiet, strong, composed, they are the ones left exposed. Their attempts to impress, insult, or intimidate fall flat against your presence. They suddenly realize they're putting on a show, and you're not even watching. That is the ultimate psychological checkmate. Not silence alone, not stillness alone, but the totality of your being saying, without speaking, I am not moved. The most powerful response is never reactive. It is embodied, grounded, invisible to the untrained eye, but unmistakable to those who try to challenge you. This is the art of body language mastery, not to prove anything, but to remind them, and yourself, that real power never needs to shout. There comes a moment in every confrontation, whether it's subtle or explosive, when the temperature rises. Emotions flare, words fly, tension thickens. And everyone, including the person across from you, is waiting to see what you'll do next. This is the critical moment, the moment where most people crack. They either erupt or withdraw. They try to out-talk, out-shout, or out-explain, but not you. Because you understand something they don't. That power is not performed. It is held. And the final blow, the ultimate psychological comeback, is not delivered through words. It is delivered through the deafening weight of your silence. This is not just a pause. It's a declaration, a refusal, a final statement that says, this conversation ends with my lack of interest. Because the truth is, the most commanding presence in any room is not the one that talks the loudest. It's the one that radiates the deepest calm. The one who doesn't flinch, doesn't justify, doesn't need to win. That's the person who truly dominates. And when you reach this level of restraint, your silence no longer feels passive. It becomes an undeniable force. Think of it like this. When chaos reaches its peak, people search for an anchor. They look for someone grounded, someone who isn't panicking, someone who doesn't need to prove a thing. And when that person is you, still, quiet, utterly self-possessed, everything changes. Your silence becomes the eye of the storm, and that calm is louder than any noise they can make. Why? Because silence, in its most intentional form, does not represent emptiness. It represents certainty. It says, I don't need to react because I know who I am. It says, your energy is not welcome here. It says, I've already won by not playing your game. And it forces others, especially those who thrive on conflict, to face something they often avoid, themselves. That's why silence is feared, not because it's void of response, but because it's full of reflection. And people can't manipulate a reflection. They can't argue with it. They can only watch themselves unravel in the space you refuse to fill. The final blow doesn't come with a clever retort. It doesn't come with a mic drop moment. It comes when they realize they are performing alone, that their attempt to shake you, to control you, to elicit any reaction has failed, completely. And you're still standing, unmoved, untouched, uninterested. That moment, that realization, that's the cut deeper than any insult. You didn't just take their power, you let them give it away, voluntarily, desperately, publicly, in silence. And the silence echoes. It lingers in the room long after the noise dies down. People remember that moment. They remember how you didn't flinch, how you didn't need to respond, how your stillness made everything else look childish. Because deep down, they know it takes far more strength to stay still than to lash out. And they envy that. They fear it, because most people are slaves to their emotions. But you chose silence. Not because you had nothing to say, but because nothing needed to be said. That's what makes it the final blow. It's not what you do, it's what you don't allow. You don't allow your peace to be stolen. You don't allow yourself to be pulled into someone else's spiral. You don't allow your voice to be cheapened by shouting into the void. You hold your power. You keep your dignity. You walk away, or you stand tall without a single word because your presence already delivered the message. Loud, clear, unforgettable. So next time someone tries to provoke you, remember, the real victory isn't in what you say. It's in what you no longer feel the need to say. Let them speak. Let them perform. Let them exhaust themselves. And when the moment's right, say nothing. Let the silence land like thunder. Let it speak your power. Let it be the last word.